For the week of week 4, I've provided you with examples all in one file instead of breaking it up into 2 files. Associated with homework 4A, you will find the inventory, meanings, and assumptions on discount tabs available for you. In the meanings tab, we have information on our week's supply of each of our products that we need for some of our calculations. Our assumptions on discount show us how we calculate our total order quantity discount, which also helps us with one of our calculations. You'll notice here, all of our product division codes are in order. In your homework, this will not be the case. So you will select on column B, select sort and filter, sort A to Z. You'll get a message that pops up, click OK, and everything will be sorted in order: BAK, can, CLN, dry, etc. So first we need to calculate how many of our units we need to have. So for all of our bakery, we need to put an equal sign and then reference our meanings tab and select B14 for our 9. We then need to multiply this by information within our inventory tab, which in this case is our daily sales. We hit enter. We now drag that formula down through F6 because that ends our bakery. You'll notice that our formulas are incorrect. We need to refer back and make B14 an absolute cell reference. We enter, and now we drag down, and our responses are correct. We do the same thing related to can. We equals, we go into our meanings tab, we select B13 representing can. Let's make this an absolute to start with so we don't have issues later. We then need to multiply that from information in our inventory. Again, we select our daily sales, we enter, and we drag that down through cell F14 where our can listing ends. Now for CLN, we need to do the same thing. Equals, meanings, select B15, our CLN, make it an absolute to start with, so when we drag down, our formulas are set. We then multiply that by inventory, daily sales, enter. We drag that down through F19, where our CLN finishes. Again, for dry, we do the same thing. Equals, meanings, B11, make it an absolute so we can autofill with our formula. We then multiply that by our daily sales. You can scroll down along to see as we go. And we drag this down to F32, where dry ends. For MET, again, equals, meanings, this time B12 associated with MET. We make it an absolute. We then multiply it by our information in the inventory tab or worksheet. And we drag this down to F40 when our MET ends. And finally, for PAP equals meanings, B16, we make it an absolute cell reference. We then multiply it by our information in the inventory workbook. And we drag down to the end of our information. So now we know how many of these items we need based on what we're required to have. So now we need to calculate how many do we have. Well, we already know that. That's in C2 on hand. So we equal C2. We click back into our cell and we autofill down through cell G51. Next, we need to calculate our order quantity. In order to compute this, we simply subtract how many we have from how many we need. We hit enter. In this case, 72 minus 45 is 27. We autofill this formula down to H51. You'll notice some of these have negative values in them. In order for what we need to compute to work properly, you need to go through and put a 0 wherever there is a negative number listed. If it is not a positive number, again, turn it into a 0. You'll see why we do this momentarily. If it is 0, leave it as 0. Only the negative numbers need to be zeroed out. The reason we do this is we need to compute our total order quantity in cell H52. So we use our sum function and we select our range of H2 to H51. If we total the negative numbers within this cell, it would completely and adversely impact our total order quantity to be the wrong amount of money. So we notice here we have 1307 as our answer. Next, we need to compute our discount rate. So we need to go into our assumptions on discounts. Our total order number we have is 1307. So this is between 0 and 2000. So we have a 0% discount rate provided to us. So next we need to calculate our net price per unit. In order to do that, we select our list price, and then we select subtract it from our list price times our discount rate. We need to make that an absolute cell reference so that when we drag it down with autofill, our formula does not need to be changed for anything. So again, this is the list price minus the list price times the discount. We hit enter. We select again and autofill down to I-51. And you will notice that because our discount rate is 0, that our net price per unit is exactly the same as our list price. In the homework example, this may not be the same. Next, we need to calculate our total cost per unit. We do that by multiplying our net price per unit by our order quantity. You hit enter, we have our price. We autofill down through K51. And now we need to calculate our total cost, which is our sum function with our range of K2 through K51. Close the function, and our total cost is $6,197.98. You'll notice if we have no quantity ordered, we don't have to pay anything associated with that. This should help you in completing homework 4A. When working on homework 4B, the inventory strings and NFL files or worksheets should help you greatly. Again, I utilized the sort and filter A to Z in order to organize all of our product divisions accordingly. You're asked to export out the division description, product number, and color description, and combine them into a full description with dashes in between. So I created columns which include the dashes in between to best help us create our full description. So to best address how to get the information for our division description out of our cell of product number, we want to use, again, a nested function. This time, an ifs function. So we're going to put left functions inside of our ifs function. Again, with ifs, you can test for multiple things. So in this case, if we start left for A2, the first three parameters are B, A, K. We want to check that. If they are B, A, K, then we will return the word bakery. However, we want to check for all six at one time, so we can simply autofill the formula through. So next, we want to check to see if it's CAN. If it is, canned goods. Next, we want to check for CLN. If it's CLN, return cleaners. We continue to go through and test for all of our possibilities. The next one is dry. This will be dairy. Next, we will check for MET, which will be referenced as meat. And finally, we need to check for PAP, which will return paper. We're finally finished with our formula. Once you hit enter, you'll notice bakery appears. So we have our formula set up correctly. If you autofill the formula down to F51, It should be paper for all of our PAPs, meat for all of our METs, and so on and so forth. Next, we need to calculate our product number. Luckily for us, our product number is 3 pieces of information right inside our product number. So we use our mid function. So the first piece of information we need in our mid function is what we're looking at. So in this case, it's A2. The next piece we need is where we're going to start. So we put in 4 because we want to start in the 4th piece of information. We already have the BAK out in our division description. And finally, we want our number of characters to be 3 because there are 3 product numbers. In this case, 875. So when we close out our function and hit enter, 875 appears. We now drag this down to H51 and go through and check to see if all of the numbers match with what we have done. Next, we have our color description. Again, it is most easiest to use an ifs function. This time, however, with a right formula embedded within it. This is because all of our color descriptions are the last piece of the information. So we select our cell A2, and we just need 1 as the number of characters in this instance, because we're just looking at the last piece of information. So first we want to check if it's a G. If it's a G, we return gray. We have to create another right function within our if. This time, we want to check if the letter is W. If it's W, we return white. Another right function is created. This time, to check if our letter is B. If it is B, we reference the color as black. And finally, one last right function based on the 4 possible colors. This time, if it is an R, we produce red. Then you close out your function, and we check and see B refers to black. This is correct. We autofill our formula down to J51, and again check on all of your color descriptions to make sure that they match correctly. Now we need to put it together with our full description. We do this very simply. Equals F2 control 7, which is an ampersand. G2, again, our ampersand. H2, again, our ampersand. I2, again, our ampersand. And then J2. We hit enter. We get our full description, bakery-85-black, as we combine all 5 pieces. We autofill down to K51, and this is very similar to the first part of homework 4B. You'll notice here NFL. Within homework 4B, there are also some MLB formulas. This primarily uses left, mid, and right to determine whether or not you can pull information out. So TB, Tampa Bay, NO, New Orleans, SF, San Francisco, NE, New England, LV, Las Vegas. I provided less examples here for you so that you can quickly go through the practice before you complete the homework. So in order to calculate who the first team is, we need to utilize a left function. So we select C2, and we want the first two pieces of information, TB. In your homework, the team names will be 3 letters, so you will have to change that second parameter to 3. When you hit enter, you get TB. Autofill this down, and you'll get the first team for all of them. Next, we need to calculate our first team score. So in this instance, we want to use the mid function. We select our cell. Our second parameter is where we're starting. In this case, 3, where our first number of the score is presented. And then we need to check the number of characters, which is 2. If you ever had a score of over 100, that parameter would change to 3. You hit enter, you get the 29 taken out. We autofill this formula down, and we now have the score for all of the first teams. To find out who the second team is, we can also use a mid function. Our first parameter is the cell we're looking at. Where we're starting, in this case 5. The 5th piece of our information in represents the start of the second team, and then 2 because the team name is only 2 letters. We hit enter, we autofill the formula down, and now we have both teams competing in each game. In order to calculate the second team score, we should use a right function. Starting from the right, our first parameter is our cell, and next we need to calculate our number of characters. Our score is only 2 characters, so we select 2 as our second parameter. You'll notice 32 is associated with New Orleans score. We autofill that down, and now we have our second team score for all of our teams. Next, we're asked to determine who won. So simply we can use an if formula here. We can calculate if F2 is greater than H2. If that is true, then we select our first team. If that is false, we select our second team. We close out our formula, and 32 is greater than 29, so our result should return NO. And it does for New Orleans. We autofill this formula down, and in each case go through and check to make sure that we have the appropriate winning team. Next, we want to calculate our winning score. So again, we'll use an if function. So what do we want to test here? If I2 equals E2, we're comparing our who won with our first team, then we return F2. If not, we return H2. So who won we're associating with our first team. If they're the same, our first team scores show up. If not, our second team scores shows up. And we enter, and we see that our second team score shows up because New Orleans won. And we drag this down, and all of the winning scores populate. Finally, we're asked to find how many games Tampa Bay won. In this case, we need to use a different function under the statistical state called COUNTIF. It asks us for our range. In this case, our range is the Who Won section. So when range is selected, we highlight I2 through I8. We're then asked for our criteria. In this case, our criteria is TB for Tampa Bay. When you click back in a range, you'll notice the quotes show up automatically for you. Once you click OK, the number 1 shows up, and you'll notice you can go back and check under Who Won. TB is only listed once, Tampa Bay only won once, so that is what COUNTIF provides us. It is accurate, and we have our correct answer. So now you should be able to go through and do homework 4B, 4A, and everything in between with ease.